Bon après-midi tout le monde. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
43rd meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. Nous nous rencontrons aujourd'hui.
Today we are going to meet to have an update, to look at the fall 2006 reports of the Auditor General of Canada, and in particular regarding the Beyond the Border Action Plan.
Auditor General Nancy Cheng, Assistant Auditor General, and Martin Dompierre, who was the principal in charge of the study. We have from the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Gina Wilson, thank you for being here, Associate Deputy Minister. We have from the Treasury Board Secretariat, Brian Pagan, Assistant Secretary, Expenditure and Megan, welcome. Expenditure Management, I'm sorry. From Privy Council Office, David McGovern, Deputy National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister, welcome. And from the Department of Transport, we have Lauren Kinney, Assistant Deputy Minister, Safety and Security, and we have Catherine Higgins, Assistant Deputy Minister, Programs. So welcome to all. Thank you very much for your presence, and I would invite Mr. Pagan to start us off with his briefing notes. We are waiting for the briefing notes from Mr. McGovern just to be distributed to everybody, but they're being photocopied at the moment. The floor is yours, Mr. Pagan. Thank you.
Merci et bonjour.
Thank you and hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to appear before your committee today. Today, I will outline how we at the Secretariat are addressing the Auditor General's recommendation regarding the Beyond the Border Action Plan, and briefly discuss our approach to managing horizontal initiatives.
To leverage the attention, the efforts, and resources of multiple departments and stakeholders to achieve shared outcomes. Each horizontal initiative has a lead department responsible for coordination and reporting. In addition, an interdepartmental governing committee is generally established to ensure the initiative is well managed. While horizontal initiatives can have value, they also come with certain challenges. First, it can be difficult to ensure coordination, consistency, and validation of data collection, analysis, and reporting across many departments. This effort takes resources, time, and learning to work across different management structures and organizational cultures of the lead and partner departments. Secondly, there can also be challenges in developing appropriate performance indicators that measure real outcomes rather than simply inputs and outputs. Thirdly, horizontal initiatives are often complements to existing programs, and it can therefore be difficult at times to separate the results achieved with the top-up or incremental funding from that of the program's ongoing funding.
Over the years, the Treasury Board Secretariat has worked to address these challenges and improve management and reporting on horizontal initiatives. In addition to requiring lead departments to report on progress in their performance reports to Parliament, we have set up a horizontal initiative database, and more recently issued a guide on the management and reporting of horizontal initiatives.
The Auditor General found that there was room for improvement in this guidance, and in particular, the Auditor General recommended that TBS clarify reporting roles and responsibilities, clarify guidance for lead and partner departments with respect to reporting a consolidated view of progress, and clarify the requirements of a financial costing framework for horizontal initiatives. We fully support these recommendations. Pour donner suite à la recommandation du vérificateur général,
as an initial step, we responded to the recommendation of the Auditor General. We implemented a requirement for the 2017-18 departmental plans that requires departments to report on the total spending of each horizontal initiative. This will help to provide a consolidated view of the progress made.
Treasury Board policy on results that came into effect in the summer of 2016 to clarify results expectations of programs and improve the quality of program outcomes and performance indicators. This will allow the Secretariat to improve its monitoring function to better track performance and costing information of horizontal initiatives. This approach will also allow us to integrate the horizontal initiatives database with the TBS InfoBase tool. And if you don't know that tool, I commend it to you. In this way, we expect to present information in a clearer, easier to navigate format that would have the dual effect of increasing accessibility to horizontal information and improving reporting on progress, results, and costs to Canadians and parliamentarians. Finally, the Treasury Board Secretariat is reviewing the Guide on the Management and Reporting of Horizontal Initiatives that was promulgated in 2014, and we are working with departments and agencies to identify critical areas which require improved instruments and guidance. We plan on completing modifications to this guidance this calendar year. Madame la Présidente, voilà qui conclut.
Madam Chair, this concludes my brief overview of our progress in managing and reporting on horizontal initiatives and the steps we are putting in place to improve the quality and transparency of information in response to the Auditor General's recommendation.
My colleagues, I'd be happy to address any questions you have on the TBS role in horizontal initiatives.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Pagan. And now we go
Very much, Mr. Pagan.
from the Treasury Board, no, from the Privy Council, sorry.
Merci, Madame la Présidente,
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
for me to appear before you today. My name's David McGovern. I'm the Deputy National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister. However, I'm here today in my previous role as Senior Advisor to the Privy Council Office, responsible for Border Action Plan implementation from May 2014 until January 2015, when I was named the Deputy National Security Advisor. Après ma nomination, j'ai continué.
After being nominated, I continue to work on the border initiative while we were transitioning to the current government. The action plan beyond the border in 2011, there were more than 30 commitments made to improve security and to accelerate the legitimate transportation of people and goods to both sides of the border.
Long-standing history of cooperation along our shared border, recognizing that we are each other's closest ally and most important security and economic partner. Included in this plan were two specific commitments that I wish to draw to your attention, related to implementation and oversight. Responsibility for ensuring interagency coordination rested with the Prime Minister and the President and their respective officials. In Canada, this responsibility was led by the Special Advisor and a specially created small team in the Privy Council Office. This approach was mirrored in the United States, where it was led by a senior official in the National Security Council in the White House. The joint leads established an interagency beyond the border working group called the Executive Steering Committee, comprising executive heads or associates from relevant departments and agencies that were implicated in the action plan. The Executive Steering Committee was also tasked with reporting on implementation on the action plan through the publication of an annual joint Canada-US implementation report. 4 such joint implementation reports were released. These documents describe progress in meeting the action plan commitments, and like all key beyond the border documents, they're housed on Canadian and US government websites. Le Comité Directeur de Gestion.
The Executive Steering Committee met several times, and the last time in October 2016. In Canada, the Committee on Borders, it was established to complement the work of the Executive Steering Committee. And this Deputy Minister Committee was presided by the Special Advisor and of Deputy Ministers and delegates from CBSA, from Transport Canada, IRCC, Industry Canada, and as needed from other departments and agencies. The Deputy Committee was set up to discuss issues related to the implementation of the plan and to report on progress and to discuss the needs of stakeholders and to solve problems. Later on, it examined the issues related to planning the transition in 2015.
By a shadow assistant deputy minister steering committee that was chaired by the Border Implementation Team's assistant secretary. PCO received temporary funding in 2012 through the Beyond the Border initiative to support a small secretariat. This secretariat has since been wound down throughout 2016. By the time the election was called in 2015, a large majority of the initiatives had either been completed or were on track. Of the issues that were not yet completed or were experiencing challenges, 2 were considered key from both a Canadian and a U.S. perspective, namely entry-exit and pre-clearance. In March 2016, several key deliverables were announced at the Prime Minister Trudeau and President Obama summit, including cooperation on issues that affect our shared border. The 2 leaders reinforced their intentions to bring into force the Canada-U.S. Agreement on land, rail, marine, and air transport pre-clearance. Building on more than 60 years of pre-clearance cooperation, the new agreement will further enhance both countries' mutual security and facilitate low-risk cross-border movement in all modes of travel. The 2 countries also agreed to explore the conditions necessary for cargo pre-clearance and to identify opportunities to pilot this approach. Both countries also committed to fully implement a system to exchange basic biographic entry information at the land border. This builds on the process already in place for third country nationals and will allow Canada and the U.S. to enhance border security in an effective and responsible way. Les processus seront appliqués.
The processes will be applied in respecting the constitutional and legal framework of each of the countries and for privacy rights. The legislation regarding entry and exit to the country, Bill C-21, are pending a second reading and were tabled at the House in June 2016. The legislation regarding pre-clearance were tabled on June 17, 2016, and are also pending second reading. President Obama signed the U.S. legislation to make the pre-clearance agreement come into effect on December 16, 2016.
Prime Minister Trudeau has committed the Canadian government to improve relations with the U.S. and to work to make substantial progress on reducing impediments to trade and commerce between our 2 countries, including by improving border infrastructure and security, streamlining cargo inspection, and facilitating the movement of people. Thank you very much, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGovern. And from the Department of Transport, I think we'll start with Ms. Kinney, and then we'll go to Ms. Higgins. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente, and thank
Hello, Madam Chair.
you today. My name is Lorraine Kinney, and I am the Assistant Deputy Minister for Safety and Security at Transport Canada. So today on the Beyond the Border Action Plan, I will be speaking specifically to Initiative Number 6, which was the Passenger Baggage Screening Initiative of mutual recognition of outbound checked baggage. As part of the Beyond the Border Action Plan, Canada has deployed new baggage screening technology certified by the United States at Canada's 8 airports with pre-clearance services. This has enabled the U.S. to gradually lift the requirement to re-screen baggage from these airports prior to its departure on a connecting flight from a U.S. airport. The new technology has been installed and is operational at all 8 airports. At this time, the United States has lifted its re-screening requirement at 6 out of the 8 airports, and the technology at the remaining 2 airports is in the final stages of being approved. In regards to benefits of this initiative, the elimination of the rescreening requirement is directly in line with the Beyond the Border Action Plan principle of screen once, accept twice. It increases security harmonization between Canada and the United States and results in cost savings, simpler operations, and a better traveler experience. Airlines have already reported a reduction in complaints from mishandled bags and less complexity in arrival procedures. The reduction in the amount of checked baggage that must be rescreened has also led to savings for both the airlines operating in the United States and the Transportation Security Administration. The modernization of screening technology has also enhanced security at Canadian airports by upgrading previously operational screening equipment that was nearing the end of its life cycle. In response to the Auditor General's recommendations in the Fall 2016 report, Transport Canada and the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority have developed new performance indicators on the security benefits of the initiative and are thus better able to track those benefits as of December 2016. In conclusion, ultimately we continue to seek better security screening by leveraging new technologies and new methods, which enable shorter connection times and a more efficient experience for the traveler at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Ms. Higgins, the floor is yours.
Madame la Présidente, membres du comité.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, hello. I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about the Beyond the Border Action Plan and to tell you what we're doing at Transport Canada to address concerns raised in the Auditor General's report. In 2011, Canada and the United States issued the Beyond the Border Action Plan, which included 34 initiatives aimed at making the Canada-US border more efficient, safe, and secure.
On one of these initiatives, namely deploying border wait time technology. Under the Beyond the Border Action Plan, Canada and the United States committed to install border wait time measurement solutions at top high-priority land border crossings. The goal was to provide real-time information to drivers on border wait times, and this information allows travelers and commercial drivers to make informed decisions about when and where to cross the border. Border wait time technology has been installed and is operational on both sides of the border at 7 crossings. There are 4 between British Columbia and Washington State, 2 between Ontario and New York State, and 1 between Ontario and Michigan. The audit report recommended that Transport Canada and the Canada Border Service Agency work together to assess the benefits of the existing border wait time technology and to develop performance indicators to measure benefits of completed and ongoing border technology installations. Both departments agreed with the recommendations and committed to working together to address them. We recognize the importance of accurate and reliable border wait time data at border crossings. Transport Canada developed a management action plan in consultation with the Canada Border Service Agency, which included establishing a working group to address the recommendations, to develop performance indicators, and to assess the benefits of the existing border wait time technology. I'm pleased to inform you that we have established the working group. It was formed in December 2016, comprised of staff from Transport Canada and the Canada Border Service Agency. The working group met in January. An analysis work is underway to develop the performance indicators. These indicators are a set of measurable values that demonstrate how effectively the border wait time technologies are performing. We intend to have performance indicators developed by March of this year, which would allow us to then assess the benefits of the existing border wait time technology by July of 2017. Pour terminer, Madame la Présidente.
Conclusion, Madam Chair and committee members, I would like to thank you once again for hearing us today. I would be happy now to answer your questions on the deployment of border wait time technology.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Higgins.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Now it's time to ask my colleagues to speak. Mr. Lefebvre, you have 5 minutes. Thank you once again for my colleagues who were here Monday and for here to help, to help answer questions, to talk about security and trade with our neighbors to the south. So I think that's really great that all the efforts that are going on in Canada and in the United States to make sure we can focus on this very important issue. But the auditor's report says there's still work to be done to make sure we implement all of the action plan items in place. I have a few questions for each of you. I'll first start with Transport Canada. In the recommendations of the Auditor General, I just have the document here in front of me, although the interpreter does not. At 1.4 of his report, he says in English,
the security benefits for the initiatives that they are responsible for, and measure and report accurate and reliable results against baselines and targets to be able and to assess the security benefits achieved. And your response was, we agree. We'll do this by, so basically you said you agree, Transport Canada will work with the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority to develop a performance indicator that measures the security benefits of the passengers checked baggage screening initiative, including the establishment of a baseline and measure and reporting of results. And this action will be completed no later than January 31st, 2017. Now, am I wrong in saying, because what you've just presented to us, this was on, is on the working group that was in December 2016 that you formed, and the performance indicators developed for March 2017, but this is on board or wait time technology. So this is the same thing. So we just extended it by a few months, right? You basically you had responded to the Auditor General that you would be providing this by January. So right now you don't have this. Am I correct?
So in terms of the checked baggage and mutual recognition, that date was January 31st to complete the recommendations. They are fully complete. We have established 2 measurements, indicators, and we have established baselines, and it is fully complete.
Can we have a copy of those?
Can I follow up with the department on that?
Oh, yeah, for sure, please, yeah. And so what measures did you take what measures did you put in place to achieve these results?
So the 2 measures that we looked at were focused on the security because the original measures had been focused on facilitation, as was noted in the Auditor General's report. And so the 2 security measures, by definition, the equipment is more secure because it does a better job of detection. And so the measures that were selected were the number of bags or the percentage of bags that were screened with the new technology of those bags at those airports going to the U.S., and the second measurement was the reliability of the technology, which is clearly important in demonstrating the security value. And so those were the 2 measures.
Yeah, it's interesting. Who decides on the technology? Obviously, within the Department of Transport, you try it out and you test it. I'm assuming. How do you make that decision?
So Transport Canada has a regulatory role on setting the expectations for technology like this and other technology used in the airports and the aviation system. And we work with our international colleagues to set standards and to recognize different types of equipment that meet the standards so that various parties can purchase equipment then that meets the standards. In this particular case, the equipment was selected to meet both the U.S. standards and acceptable standards in Canada so that mutual recognition could be achieved.
Right. Interesting. So now I would assume then that the U.S. would have the same technology as we do, same equipment as we do?
That was what it was based on at the time. I just don't 100% know what their current technology complement is.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. With respect to the Treasury Board, we've talked a lot about data and collecting data and making sure that there's consistent data that is being collected across all departments and all agencies within the government. And I commend you on your efforts with this horizontal initiative. Now, what other horizontal initiatives have you taken place in other departments and agencies? Is it all departments that you've done it? Or is it piecemeal one by one, you're going through each one and to verify from the Treasury Board that you're implementing it?
Great. Thank you for the question. The concept of horizontal initiatives and managing in a more horizontal way is not a new phenomenon for us here in the government. In many respects, all programming in one form or another requires the leveraging of efforts and expertise across the public service. The challenge for us is that resources are allocated vertically. They're allocated to ministers. Ministers are accountable to departments, or to Parliament. Departments are responsible for implementing programs. In 2003, the Auditor General helped shed some light on the need to develop a more fulsome view of the way in which we work horizontally. By identifying for the first time in departmental performance reports the need to distinguish between a vertical program in a department and something that is happening formally across the public service. And since that time, we have been on a continuous journey of improvement in terms of identifying the governance structures, the reporting mechanisms, the ways in which to allocate resources and report on results. Okay. At this time, there are 29 initiatives across the government that are designated as formal horizontal initiatives.
I only have a minute left, but that's what I wanted to hear, and I thank you for that, because I'm assuming that maybe will be a theme that we will be seeing here at the Public Accounts Committee with the Treasury Board as to other departments, and how are they following this horizontal model. Last point, Madame la Présidente, public safety. I raised this on Monday, and I'll do it again, just maybe a response. Basically, in the Auditor General's comments, Mr. Ferguson's comments on Monday, he said at paragraph 12, they examined how progress of the action plan was reported and whether this reporting was complete and accurate. And overall, we found that the 2014-2015 report on the Beyond the Border Action Plan Horizontal Initiative, Public Safety Canada provided an incomplete and inaccurate picture of progress and costs. It goes on to say, as an example, for the initiative on deploying border wait time technology, the report stated that 7 crossings had been completed. The report did not mention that 6 crossings had been completed years before the action plan was released. Then for the Shipwriter initiative, the report did not mention that the second main commitment to expand pilot projects on land had not been started, or that there were no plans to pursue them. For the initiative on enhancing benefits to trusted trader programs, the report stated that there were 83 new members in the 2014-2015 fiscal year, but it did not mention that the long-term goal was to attract 1,700 new members. So in light of these discrepancies in what was in the report and what should have been in the report, can you explain to us why these inaccuracies were there?
As quickly as possible, please.
Madame Wilson, merci.
Those specific discrepancies?
Well, why, again, are these just certain examples, or is this a theme that recurs and that is kind of goes by the radar?
Well, I think a lot of those examples that you've provided are a good indication of why we need to precisely improve our ability to report horizontally, match up the costing framework with the performance reporting and so on. I think it was made pretty clear on Monday that we have a ways to go on that front.
Yes.
Deputy Malcolm Brown was here, spoke very at length about the need for us to improve our ability to do just that, and has made some commitments along those lines. So we'll be able to report back to you as to whether that has in fact occurred.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, but
I'm sorry.
just okay.
I'm way past overtime.
Okay, I'll come back to it.
Mr. McColman, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. My first question is to the Treasury Board, and it's in the document we received that documents the Auditor General's recommendations and then the departmental response. And I want to refer to this, the first 2 columns. Treasury Board, and I'll read, Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat should improve, this is the Auditor General's recommendation. The Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat should improve its guidance on the management and reporting of horizontal initiatives to, number 1, clarify roles and responsibilities for lead and partner departments and agencies responsible for reporting accurately and completely on horizontal initiatives. 2, clarify guidance for lead and partner departments and agencies reporting a consolidated view of progress results and the costs for initiatives over the years. And 3, clarify the requirements of a financial costing framework for horizontal initiatives. The departmental response was quite interesting when I read the words. and I'll read it to you. You agreed, period, agreed. And then it goes on to a fairly lengthy narrative after the word agreed. And it reads, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat will update its guidance on the managing and reporting of horizontal initiatives. And this is where I want to ask some clarification. The next words are as appropriate. So it puts a condition that the Auditor General did not put on, which is the appropriateness. And then to clarify the expectations for the lead and partner departments and agencies involved in horizontal initiatives. And I'll end it there, because there's a quite lengthy more narrative that goes on beyond that. So it appeared to me when I read this, and I'm asking you in a forthright way, that the Auditor General's recommendations were pretty clear, 1, 2, and 3, which you agreed to. But then there was the need to, I suppose, clarify the conditions with which the Treasury Board Secretariat would do these things. And I find that to be somewhat of a rewrite of what the Auditor General had recommended be accomplished. Am I correct in my interpretation of the narrative you provided after you agreed that these things should be done?
Well, thank you, Mr. Olin. I believe that you are correct in saying that the Treasury Board Secretariat agrees with the recommendations of the Auditor General.
Correct.
And there are 3 areas in which we are going to pursue improved guidance. That is clarifying roles and responsibilities of leads versus partners, clarifying guidance with respect to a consolidated view of reporting, and then on the financial costing and reporting. We have existing guidance that we can build from, and so my understanding is that as appropriate, there's no condition there. It's to take what we have and to refine and hone that guidance so that it is crystal clear to departments what is required with respect to the utilization of resources allocated for horizontal initiatives, and how to report in that way. Our existing guidance identifies an end-to-end business process. So it starts with identifying the need. Can you solve this vertically, or do you need to work horizontally to solve an initiative? So it sets out how you would go about identifying that need and the consultations required. Then it explains the process around cabinet approval, and one of the key requirements is to identify how we're using resources already allocated to departments, and how those new incremental resources would be brought to bear to solve this horizontal approach. The third step is to create an inventory of programs. There are some 1,300, 1,400 programs out there in the Government of Canada. And in some cases we need to create new ones, but in others we can leverage existing resources. And so the approach to horizontal initiatives is meant to tap into what is out there already, what can we draw from, what existing programs, what existing performance information and data can be brought to bear to support the desired outcome. Then we get into Treasury Board approval processes, the allocation of monies from Treasury Board approved by Parliament through the estimates. Then we have guidance on performance measurement, and we are very clear in the guidance that there is a distinction to be made between the lead and the partner department. I believe that we can further clarify what the lead department requires from partners and how they're to roll up that information in terms of a consolidated view. Then there's guidance on execution, program implementation, annual reporting, and then finally a closeout report. So that provides, I think, a very healthy starting point for us to work with our partners, confirm what is clear and remains in place, and then perhaps where they may need some additional support and guidance in terms of putting appropriate reporting in place. And I think what we heard on Monday was some need to work with departments on more specifics on performance measurement, performance indicators, and perhaps a clear distinction between moving beyond inputs and outputs and into outcomes.
I'm happy to hear your response to the question. However, it does bear the question, beg the question to go back to this. Who in your department would have wrote this departmental response? Are you aware of this document?
I am, yes, absolutely.
Who would have written that?
Well, as always, these are team endeavors. We have a responsibility center within my sector that liaised with the AG on this audit and worked very closely in understanding the recommendation and crafting a response. This would have been brought to me for my approval, and ultimately the Secretary and the President agree to the commitments that TBS makes with respect to the OAG recommendation.
That's a very different response than what I read, what you gave today at this meeting. And I appreciate that response, because what this basically, if interpreted the way it reads, is that you're going to do, you agree with the recommendations of the Auditor General, but you're going to do it your way, and you're telling the Auditor General there are conditions, because it talks about you will update the guidance and clarify the rules and expectations, clarify expectations of the reporting of consolidated progress and such. It goes on to talk about you doing that, which is very different than the wording the Auditor General gave you. So I appreciate your clarification here today, and would, if this is the information that we're getting to be able to come to a committee and better understand that your department is taking the proper initiatives. This was very misleading versus your testimony here today, in my opinion.
Glad to have clarified that.
Okay? So I'm glad you've clarified it.
If I may, we'd ask the department if we could have a revised action plan, at least on that issue.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I missed that.
If we could have a revised action plan to perhaps just respond to Mr. McColman's comments in the language that was used.
Thank you.
Is
How much time do I have? Yeah, that's.
No, you're done with your time, sorry.
Oh, really?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Oh, my goodness.
Madam Chair, perhaps I can clarify a little bit. That column that's called departmental response is actually the official response to our recommendation. It is included in our audit report. Perhaps what the member is seeking is clarification on the action that they're going to take. So if they're going to revise this at all, it should be the other columns to clarify indeed what they think they would be doing, as opposed to changing that column. So at this juncture, that's captured and cast in terms of the official response. So that column really does not serve a lot of purpose to be changed because it's already in our report.
Yeah.
I hope
Duly
that helps.
noted. Thank you. And now it's Mr. Christopherson's time, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here today. This is a rather extraordinary meeting. It's not usual for us to take 4 hours on one chapter, so you can understand the importance that we're placing on this. The earlier meeting, we went out of our way, I won't do it again, but we went out of our way to make the case that Mr. Lefebvre has outlined so adequately in terms of the seriousness and how it just seems to be pervasive everywhere, that the indicators that are needed to make accurate determinations are just not there. And so yes, the last meeting we focused a lot on what are you going to do about it, because they were the agencies. But I want to spend a little bit of time today with Treasury Board, because at the end of the day, Treasury Board carries the biggest piece of responsibility. And by way of evidence, I would point to early in the report of the Auditor General on page 5, under Findings, Recommendations, and Responses, Achieving Results from the Beyond the Border Action Plan, first paragraph under that heading, overall message 1.15, overall, we found that departments and agencies had not developed performance indicators to assess how initiatives have enhanced security and accelerated the legitimate flow of trade and travel. In the comments from the Auditor General on the other day, he was a little bit more blunt and a little tighter in that message, and I quote, "Finally, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat did not give departments and agencies specific guidance on costing and measuring program results, which led to different interpretations and inconsistent financial information. We concluded that although departments and agencies met many of their commitments under the action plan, they achieved limited results towards the intended benefits. They also had few performance indicators to use in assessing results. All of that's the responsibility of Treasury Board to give these agencies and departments sort of their marching orders on how they should be doing this. And yet, Mr. Pagan, you roll in here today, and the best we get is, and I'm quoting you, in his 2016 fall reports, the Auditor General found that there was room for improvement in our guidance. Wow. Talk about understating the issue. Now, I appreciate in your comments with Mr. Coleman, things are, maybe fleshing out a little bit, but I'd like, I'll start with a general question. How did we get to this situation? How could something so obviously important go so long without being seen? How are we here? Why are we here?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Christopherson. We're here because the Auditor General has produced a recent report that assesses progress on Beyond the Border Action Plan and has identified some areas for improvement. And as I said in my remarks, we agree with those recommendations. Perhaps if I can be very specific about our responses. I did indicate in a previous reply, this is an ongoing journey for us, and it's an ongoing journey in two respects. Performance information results-based management in the Government of Canada is an ongoing priority for the public service, making sure that we get the best value for resources provided. It has benefited from recent attention of the new government. We have a new results policy, a new TB policy on results that aims to clarify and simplify the expectations of departments and reporting to Parliament. Specifically with respect to horizontal initiatives, I know that this issue was surfaced to a certain extent on Monday, but I think it's important to reiterate here. Our accountabilities are vertical. In a Westminster system, ministers are responsible to Parliament. Parliament appropriates funds for departmental programs, and we recognize that there are certain challenges where that vertical accountability is not always the best way to organize
Sorry, I apologize. I was trying to give you a chance that I really don't think you're getting to my message. I have limited time. I apologize for interrupting you, but it's necessary. This is the weakest performance, in my personal opinion, this is the weakest performance so far, and you folks are the key ones. I mean, I hear a lot more apologizing and defending rather than telling us what you're going to do about it. And when I asked you how we got here, I didn't mean did we have an AG report. I meant how could we have directions given to departments and agencies that were so woefully inadequate in terms of getting the results that were asked for. I mean, and this is your second go at it. I mean, you did it a few years ago. Page 22, in the 2012 fiscal year, you were developing another guide on the management and reporting of horizontal initiatives. So this is like your second go-around. You got it wrong the last time. What assurances do we have you got it right this time? And we're not going to be back here again in a couple of years going, what the heck is with Treasury Board?
Well, thank you, Mr. Christopherson. What I suggest is that as part of my reply, I will table with the committee the existing guidance dated April 2014. It's entitled The Guide to Departments on the Management and Reporting of Horizontal Initiatives. And as I said earlier, I genuinely believe that this becomes a solid starting point upon which to complete our response to the AG. The idea is that we will refine and hone existing guidance in specific consultation with partners to make sure that our expectations are crystal clear with respect to the utilization of resources and reporting. The guidance as it stands now specifies roles and responsibilities for lead departments. It talks about coordinating the MC and the TB process. It provides instruction on coordinating the collection and validation of financial and performance information. It is clear about the reporting requirements through our Part 3 of the estimates. Partner departments likewise have expectations laid out here. We have templates in the guidance that lay out what is to be costed, broken out by votes from Parliament.
This is the new stuff or the old stuff?
This is the basis upon which we are going to respond to the Auditor General recommendation.
It's going to be different than the last time you reviewed it in 2012-13.
It's our starting point, sir.
Okay, can I? Thank you very much. And again, I try not to be rude, sir, but I've got limited time. I'd like to ask the others here: where were the internal audit committees? Like all these great auditors, these people who are aware of all these kind of measurements and indicators. Nobody anywhere in the internal auditing system said, you know what? We're sort of measuring things that don't really matter. And we're not measuring the actual outcome results. Like, where were the audit committees? I would have thought one bright light somewhere in those meetings would have said, you know, the emperor's got no clothes here in terms of actually measuring whether we're getting anywhere or not.
Time? Is there anybody wants to answer that?
Well, maybe just one additional comment in response to Mr. Christensen. The report, the most recent report compiled by Public Safety, it's dated 2014-15, Beyond the Border Action Plan Initiative. It's on our website. This lays out the state of the art right now. It lays out for the public, for parliamentarians, the themes, the 32 measures, the performance indicators used, the dollars spent. And there is some good stuff in here. If you're looking at outcomes, sir, I would commend to you page 4 of the 2014-15 report, where they look at the Nexus program versus conventional screening at borders. And we see with the Nexus program, it's 33 seconds to get through a point of entry, whereas with, and that's almost...
but you know what, that was an example of where the wrong measurement was made, because that's fine for that little part of the Nexus system, but the real question is, how long does it take somebody to actually get through...
Mr. Christopherson, we'll come back if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. You'll have another opportunity. So, Mr. Jennerowitz, sorry?
I think you.
Oh, Mr. Chen, I'm sorry.
I'll take it.
Getting lost in my...
I'll take this.
Merci, Madame
I'm really sorry.
la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Mr. Pagan.
Many of my colleagues in the House when I say that Canadians really expect good service. And within the context of this Beyond the Borders action plan, I know that our borders, our Canadians want them to be safe, they want them to be secure, they want them to be efficient, both for the movement of people and the transport of goods. At the same time, however, Canadians want to know that our government itself is accountable, it's transparent, that it's running effectively. And in that vein, I believe there is a daunting task before all of us here today to ensure that the multiple departments and agencies involved with this project are working collaboratively, that they are meeting the shared objectives that have been set out, and that there is clear reporting on outcomes and performance measures that are properly addressed. So, with respect to recommendation 1.87, I know that the Secretariat responded to the Auditor General's critique of the guidance, as we've been talking about here today, the guidance that was provided by the Treasury Board Secretariat, and I know that you've responded saying that updated guidance will be completed by July 2017. It will help clarify the roles and responsibilities for the reporting of financial and results information. But you've talked about a couple things, a couple concrete things, the horizontal initiatives database, and secondly, the guide on the management and reporting of horizontal initiatives. I'm interested to know, moving forward, guidance needs to be interpreted, and because there is a multitude of agencies and departments involved, that interpretation can vary. So what process is the Secretariat undertaking to ensure that the guidance is clear, that departments are able to interpret and apply it consistently?
Well, thank you. Pardon me. Thank you for the question. At Treasury Board Secretariat, the process by which we promulgate guidance or Treasury Board policies is based on engagement with our stakeholders, with the departments actually delivering the programs, so that we can satisfy ourselves that the guidance, the policy is meeting a real need and is something that can be implemented by departments. And so the approach going forward, the guide upon which we are going to be building from, that was developed in 2014, we'll take that. We're going to engage. I mentioned that there are 29 horizontal initiatives right now. We'll engage with those departments and clarify with them what parts of that guidance are clear and remain intact, and what elements might require further refinement or greater detail in order to provide the interpretation that the departments need. That's the starting point for us, is that process of consultation and engagement. Subsequent to that, within the Secretariat, we work across our different policy centers, the Office of the Comptroller General, our Human Resource function, of course the President's Office, to make sure that the remedy we're proposing, the way forward, is consistent with other priorities and other activities in the Secretariat, so that we are not working at cross purposes to each other. And then it's a question of, upon release or promulgation of the guidance, there are elements of training and ongoing education involved, because the people we consult with in the summer could be in a new job, next spring, and so we need to continually engage with departments. And we do that through a variety of fora. We have WebEx town halls where we can broadcast messages across the country. We have regular calls with communities, specific practitioners. In my case, I deal closely with the chief financial officers and the deputy chief financial officers. So we would educate and inform through that process.
Thank you.
Wilson, I think she would like to.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so just to supplement Mr. Pagan's comments and to respond to you, Mr. Chen, I think you're asking as well, how are we going to integrate all of these new tools and systems with the new reporting framework for the Beyond the Border going forward? So what I wanted to mention is that we are establishing a horizontal initiative reporting working group with all the departments, making sure that that's consistent with the Treasury Board performance measurement reporting guidelines, so those new tools. So we're taking all these things into consideration moving forward. That working group will be meeting and going into April. Following the next meeting, Public Safety will be circulating a record of decision. We'll be providing a draft updated performance measurement framework, as well as instructions with a formal call letter requesting a thorough review of that performance measurement document, again ensuring that we're liaising with Treasury Board and their new reporting guidelines and so on, so that all of these things mesh going forward. Just wanted to add that as well.
And that's very helpful, because too often we hear that departments and agencies are working in silos and there's a lack of interconnectedness, and we hear it from the ground, from constituents, from people who oftentimes don't know where to go, or they get different information from different places. You've also referenced, Mr. Pagan, the TBS info-based tool. So there's a lot of these tools that we're talking about. We're talking about a database, we're talking about an info-based tool, we're talking about different structures where there is cross-collaboration. How will that specifically, in terms of integrating the horizontal initiatives database with the TBS info-based tool, how will that specifically allow you to ensure that that data is integrated, that it's accessible, and that the results and cost and performance can be clearly articulated to Canadians?
Right. Thank you. That's a very important point. Through our consultations and engagement with different departments and stakeholders, we've heard quite often that the data is out there. The challenge is finding it. And what we have right now with a database known as TBS Infobase and the Horizontal Initiative Database is a perfect example of that. And so the idea is to integrate these so that it's effectively one-stop shopping. If one had a question about resource utilization in the Public Service of Canada to go to a single site and query by department or by region or by name of an initiative, one should be able to find access to that information. That's our vision. It's the vision of the President of the Treasury Board. We're aware of some very good models out there currently in use that we can build from and replicate. And so the idea, sir, is to take the existing holdings and progressively integrate these or amalgamate these in a single source to provide ease of access.
Thank you very much. On commence la ronde de 5 minutes avec Monsieur Généreux.
Start a 5-minute round of question with Mr. Généreux.
I'm going to jump around a little bit in terms of the questioning, but first question to you, Ms. Cheng. We had Mr. Ferguson here on Monday. We now have you. Of everything that you've heard, of the detailed action plan that Treasury Board Secretariat has put forward, are you comfortable that a number of these initiatives are being met?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. So from our perspective, I think it speaks to the importance of the collective initiatives. The dollar amounts aren't significant if you compare it to transfer payments. You know, the scale of the Canadian operation is about $1 billion overall, right? But the objectives are really important. We're talking about Canada-U.S. border security, enhancing security there. 3 of the 4 themes that Mr. Malcolm Brown spoke to on Monday highlighted the importance of security, and then facilitating travel and trade. Those are important things. So ultimately, what we really want is for the government to be able to explain, with the spending of the money, what are we achieving with all of that? Are we enhancing security in a way? Like, the complexity that Mr. Pagan speak to is very real. Horizontal issues are not easy to manage, especially with our Westminster model and also the accountability relationship, the vertical, the ministerial, and so on and so forth. But all the more reason that people have to get together to help explain that. Because how would you expect an oversight body like yourself to be able to figure out what's actually going on over the public to actually ask for public scrutiny on money that's being spent, right? So that's the nub of the issue. So what we're looking at, and Mr. Pagan is explaining that he's helping by offering guidance on how these horizontal initiatives can be discussed so that people know what's actually happening. Part of it is accountability, but part of it is also monitoring and managing. So do we have the right information to say, here are the initiatives, that's the commitment, we continue the same way, or that, you know, there should be checkpoint and sort of say, well, maybe it's not going so well. So do we know, and do we, like, is it serving a real purpose? If we're seeing some of the details and some of the initiatives that they're not working all that well, so are we learning from that? So that additional money that we still want to spend, because at the point of the audit, I think we're still looking at $500 million that still is on the table in terms of being expense. Are we using it in the most effective way to help move those agenda that we talked about, the objective, to support those objectives, right? So that's really the nub of the question. Part of the guidance is looking for some more specificity to help people understand how they need to step up. So what does being a lead department mean? So some of the things we see is that the partner departments are providing information.
Ms. Cheng, I only have 5 minutes, and I don't want to lose us.
Sorry
that time.
for the
that's
long
fine.
answer. Pardon me.
I look forward to a more detailed response at perhaps another point. I want to quickly turn to Mr. McGovern. You gave a lot of comfort in the Canada-U.S. relationship with the previous administration. However, as of January 20th, there's now a new administration. Do you have any idea if there's ongoing discussions happening with the new administration that would give you that same level of comfort?
Thank you very much for your question. I think our relationship with the U.S. is evolving and growing every day. And one of the byproducts of Beyond the Border is that the AG reported we have 16 departments and agencies in Canada that were involved in this initiative. That was matched by a dozen agencies and departments south of the border. They clear out the top layers of the senior management, but many of the contacts that we engaged with over the past 3 or 4 years on this initiative, they're still in place. we're talking to people on a daily basis on just general matters. We're sharing information on a daily basis. I think Beyond the Border and the AG's report looked at an initiative that started in 2011. It was intended to wrap up in 2014. Some of the big showstopper initiatives like entry, exit, and pre-clearance, they required more time. So I'm interested in the retrospective, and the going forward, you could probably ask people in question period and get a better answer.
Hardly, but yeah, thank you. Last question, I want to quickly get in. Mr. Pagan, costs associated with this new detailed action plan, is it significant? Ballpark it, perhaps? I think
Costs associated with delivery of the plan, is that your question?
Yeah.
So the approvals currently in place, if I recall correctly, it's a 5-year program with a funding envelope of approximately $1.1 billion. And that is based on, again, the end-to-end business process where there was a process of consultation, identifying the needs and the gaps, and what incremental resources would be required to help fill those. And what we have provided to departments is the reporting mechanism by which they can report back to Parliament in a joined-up way on how that money is allocated and utilized over a 5-year period.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pagan. Madame Shanahan, c'est votre tour.
Shanahan, it's your turn. Sorry.
Govern, because I found it very interesting, your presentation. It kind of gave us, you kind of walked us through what was going on during those years. In what we have learned is probably the biggest single horizontal initiative that our government's undertaken, and it sounds like in conjunction with the American government as well. And I did derive some comfort in your presentation, and I come back to the paragraph when you say that by the time the election was called in 2015, a large majority of the initiatives had either been completed or were on track, and then you go on to talk about the 2 that were outstanding and how movement was being made there subsequent to 2015, and that there's outstanding legislation. So I think, we understand that. What we're talking about here, I mean, it sounds like there's a level of satisfaction with how the security initiatives were completed. What is your take on the performance indicators that we're concerned about? Because I'm not sensing that we have a concern about how the money was spent or that money was wasted. It was any kind of impropriety there, but mostly that, how do we measure security and frankly the improvement, which most interest to me, the improvements to traveler and trade time. Because we're all for security, but we also have to keep on with our daily affairs. What's your take on the performance indicators? What were you looking for?
Sure. Thanks very much for that question. So a couple things. I think it should be apparent from the testimony from Monday and today, we're in violent agreement with the Auditor General's recommendations. And in many instances, the fact that we didn't have adequate performance indicators, it actually diminishes the progress that frankly, I think we showed over the course of this initiative. Let me give you an example. So Nexus, right? You look at the AG's report, and they were very clear. They looked at the initiatives, and they looked at Nexus. From a national security perspective, Nexus, an individual voluntarily fills out an extensive application form, provides information on where they lived over the past 5 years, their jobs. It's submitted to both Canadian and U.S. authorities. They vet it. They give you a green light. You go into an office where there's a CBSA employee and a U.S. Border Patrol individual. They take your picture. They take your biometric information, so the U.S. takes your fingerprints, and then Canada takes an iris scan. So there are now probably 1.5 million people in North America, 80% of them are Canadians, who have a Nexus card. So when you're going to a border, CBSA officers, they don't have to pay attention to somebody like me who has a Nexus card, and they can focus their attention on higher risk travelers. That's a huge benefit to us. How do you measure that? I don't know. Mr. Christofferson was starting to identify a better performance measure than the ones we use to talk about Nexus. Brian talked about the fact that if you compare Nexus, when you show up at a CBSA officer, you show them your card, you clear the customs, you do it in a certain period of time. If you do it conventionally, it takes you 20, 30 seconds longer. Do you ever use your Nexus card at Pearson on a Friday night? Do you use your Nexus card at Ottawa when you're trying to go home on a Thursday night? When you can use your card and you can bypass the general line because CATSA set up a line that allows Nexus holders to clear through. So, you know, I don't know what performance indicator talking to people at Pearson Airport on a Friday night would get you, but I think the numbers of Nexus people, 20,000 new applicants a month, want Nexus from a national security perspective. Boy, I like the fact that we're looking at trusted travelers and that we're allowing our border officials to really focus on medium and higher risk travelers. That's a significant benefit. One of the other things that it's hard to really understand when you look at the AG's report, and the AG is very clear, they didn't look at national security issues. They didn't really talk to they talked to the U.S., but they didn't reflect U.S. views on this. And they didn't really talk about the Canada-U.S. relationship. When you start to look at what Nexus does for you, when you look at the electronic travel authorization, which now means passengers from non-visa exempt countries, they have to submit an ETA before they board a flight. It means in Canada, we can actually give the airlines information to tell them to board or not board an individual. That's really important to us. We'd much rather do that abroad than to do that in Canada. We have another initiative called IAPI. I've been working on this file for 3 years. For the life of me, I don't know what IAPI means, but it actually gives us information that the airlines provide us before an individual boards a flight. Our security agencies can look at IAPI and they can actually use their algorithms, their analytics to better target people that when they arrive in Canada, that they can get the scrutiny that they need, that they require. This is all a package of things that we talked about in Beyond the Border. Another thing, CPIC. It's a tool that's used by the RCMP. Well, CPIC's a good one. When CBSA officers have someone come up to them at the point of entry, they look at their passport, they see CPIC, they can see if someone has an outstanding warrant, if they have a criminal record. Since CBSA has started using CPIC, they have now achieved thousands of apprehensions where they're actually using this tool to protect our borders to a much greater extent. Sadly, how come I can't tell you exactly how many people have been apprehended by CPIC? Well, hopefully when we put the performance measures in place, we'll be able to do that.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Brenda, it's
Okay.
way over
Very
time.
interesting.
Mr. McColman, your turn. Yes, it was, which is why I didn't interrupt.
I'd like to talk about, I guess, the measurables for Transport Canada in terms of wait times. And I really appreciate the comments just made on Nexus. Just curious to know, when was Nexus started? What year did it begin? Anyone, any idea? I've gone through 2 renewals. So I was an early adopter because I travel across the border very many times in a year. And I think it existed long before Beyond the Borders began. Just as a point of interest, not that Beyond the Borders didn't amp it up to become a more important issue, but Nexus was something that was happening long before Beyond the Borders, in my opinion, just from my own senses of when my renewals happened on my Nexus cards. And Beyond the Borders might have had a part in play The last renewal, it was very much upgraded in terms of having to go back, be scrutinized one more time, update all the information, including fingerprints, irises, and all that. But I'm reading from the Auditor General's report. If you'd like to refer to it, it's on page 18, 1.74. Transport Canada and the agency developed 5 performance indicators focused on deliverables, such as the number of installations completed and the number of websites and road signs posting real-time information. However, we found that Transport Canada had not measured the benefits of existing border wait time technology, even though these installations have been operating for over 5 years. We also noted that there was no business case to support the need for more installations. Also, although the agency's website has been posting wait times generated by wait time measurement technology at 5 crossings since 2014, the agency has not assessed whether having this wait time information available has made a difference to travelers or helped the agency to better manage its operation and resources. I'll end it there. To the representatives here from Transport Canada, specifically Madam Higgins, is it reasonable, when I read that Auditor General's observation, and I look at your presentation today on the second page near the end, that you're pleased to inform us that we established a working group in December 2016 to address these issues. 5 years in the making. Any reason why the delay and why you would have the Auditor General need to even point out to you that you should be measuring what the improvements, what the public is receiving, and the better that these technologies improve, instead of just spending more money on another sign indicating what the wait times are? Your response?
Well, thank you. It's a good question, and I think I would start by saying we fully agree with and appreciate the recommendation of the Auditor General with respect to developing the outcome and the ultimate outcome benefits for Canadians from the projects. It will, in fact, inform the path forward on any future investments. You're quite right to point out that the indicators in the early stages of the plan were focused on indicators that the projects were in place, that they were available, that they were in fact working as outlined in the project. So they were availability, they were deliverables under the plan, and that was tracked very closely, and that was really the nature of the indicators. Typically in projects, you need a certain amount of time before you can start to measure the longer term outcomes and the changes that they will reap. And I think that the work that we're doing now will benefit from some of the discussions that we had with partners over the period of the plan to address some of the challenges that we were facing in moving to the next border crossings beyond the initial 6 and 7 that were in place. One of the realities was the evolution of technology, which rapidly accelerated during this time period, particularly mobile devices and the capacity that mobile devices have to inform wait times. And so there was a great deal of discussion with partners, with the U.S. and with provinces on the right technology solutions, the right approaches. So this information will be very useful in defining those indicators and in using that analysis to do the assessment of what the benefits in fact were of those projects. And that will inform going forward. So we fully agree that the utility of setting those indicators out earlier in the process is a good recommendation, and we agree with it.
I'm glad you agree with it. It only took you 4 years to figure it out. And the Auditor General had to tell you. You know, this reinforces what a lot of Canadians think, which is they see actions taken by government, they see money spent, big money spent, on installations. I see it because I travel by road very often across border crossings. And you wonder what this is doing to benefit you as a Canadian in terms of, is it speeding up my ability to cross? Is it as I come to a fork in the road, I could go to, in my case, I could go across at Niagara Falls, or I could go across at Fort Erie, or I could go across at Queenston. I could go across any one of those three. And you're not measuring it. Just to me, it reinforces again some of the thoughts that Canadians have, which are, does government effectively know what it's doing when it's coming to spending my tax dollars? I just have to say that as an observation. I'll end it there.
Thank you. Mr. Chandraria, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McGowan, you say the responsibility rested with the Prime Minister and the President. That's number one. Number two, then you had a small team in the PCO. Then you had the Executive Steering Committee. Then we had the Deputy Minister's Borders Committee. Then we had Assistant Deputy Minister Steering Committee. So with all these committees, was it difficult to coordinate?
Well, to be honest, with the Canadian participants, it wasn't. People saw the value of working horizontally, and so many of the files cross different departments, that it's not just one department that has responsibility. One of the benefits that the United States articulated, and it's not found in the AG's report, but in literally the dying days of the Obama administration, they issued a fact sheet on Beyond the Border. They were very positive, and they talked about the fact that they built a framework for interagency consultation within the United States. And that interagency framework interacted with us.
Thank
so,
you,
I mean,
Mr.
it was
Manager.
very beneficial.
Yeah. This particular, these committees, they were managing entire 34 initiatives or only specific to cross-border law and enforcement?
No, so this committee, so I was the senior advisor responsible for Beyond the Border Action Plan implementation.
Yeah.
And so I brought in many of my colleagues sitting at the table and many of the people you saw on Monday. And we went through all of the initiatives in the Beyond the Border plan. But really, when I started to get involved, our focus was on the big showstoppers. Entry, exit, pre-clearance.
Thank you. I apologize. I got limited time, so I have to go forward. You also mentioned that it was chaired by Border Implementation Team's Assistant Secretary. So there was a single point responsibility?
So the structure was me.
Yeah.
I had an assistant secretary that reported to me, and I had a small team that fluctuated between 5, 6, 7 analysts that we seconded from other departments.
Thank you. Mr. Pagan, you mentioned that horizontal approaches have got challenges. Specifically says that it takes resources, time, learning to work different management structures and processes. Was it not foreseen these problems, these challenges, were it not foreseen when this idea was conceptualized 5 or 6 years back?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's fair to say that through the process of consultation, identifying a need, the departments involved had a view of what needed to be done or what they wanted to do. Of course, the challenge is always in implementing and dealing with different organizational cultures, different governance structures.
The point is that even after 5 years, we are still talking of the challenges.
Well, sir, my colleague from the Auditor General quite helpfully pointed this out. One thing that we are faced with are the realities of our system of government, a Westminster system, where monies are allocated vertically, if you will, to departments, and ministers are accountable to Parliament for the spending of those funds. And they have their own teams, their own staff, they have to do contracting.
I'm sorry, I have to go ahead. I've got a couple of more questions. In the last meeting of ours, Deputy Minister Ryan of Public Safety mentioned that legislation has been an issue in implementing some of the initiatives. One I know is that is related to the entry-exit. That was one initiative which I think 70 million could not be used for implementing the initiative because the legislation has not passed. Are there any other legislation that are holding up? Yeah.
So that's a very good question. So enabling legislation is required for pre-clearance, and it's required for entry-exit. So think back and take a look at the calendar. The election was called in June, July, August, September, October. Government comes back in November, new government. We have to brief the government on the initiatives, the agreements in principle. They went forward. They met with President Obama in March at their summit. They reaffirmed their commitment to entry, exit, and pre-clearance. April, May, June, legislation gets introduced, and now you guys have the two pieces of legislation at second reading.
Other than that one piece of legislation, are there any other things pending?
Those are the only two that I am aware of.
Okay.
Outstanding pieces of legislation.
Done. I have Mr. Christopherson, but before I pass the floor to Mr. Christopherson, may I ask you, Mr. Pagan, et ça, je prends un petit peu mes prérogatives de m'asseoir.
My prerogative as being the chair today, I would like to ask you to give us in writing the explanation you are giving us about the challenge involved in being accountable with the current system, where the ministers are responsible quite vertically in a horizontal plan. Perhaps you could send us an explanation in writing so that I won't take up the time of my colleagues, and I would really appreciate having this.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Pagan, to come back again, you have a deputy, right? You're like an ADM. You're not the deputy.
That's right.
Correct, yeah. Or are you?
No, I'm the Assistant Secretary of Expenditure Management.
Apologies to you for taking the hits that the accounting officer is supposed to take. That's why we insist on having deputies here. But you're doing a good job of filling in. I want to come back to a couple of things. First of all, page 23 of the Auditor General's report, he makes a comment about the Shipwriter Initiative, and I just want to point out some of get back to the issue and the gaps in terms of the reporting. The previous year's report, there's a whole issue of pilot projects that we're going to start. The previous year's report, 2013-14, noted that the pilots had been postponed until legal and operational issues were resolved. In the current year, the report did not mention that the pilot projects for expanding operations on land had not been started and that there were no plans to pursue them. So it looks like a classic yes minister. In the first instance, they say, well, we've got, what do we call them here? Legal and operational issues. So we got to get these legal and operational issues resolved. And then in the follow-up year to that, there's nothing. There's nothing. So, I mean, sometimes it worries us that we get into borderline deliberate misleading, like it starts to get into that area. Here's a specific question for you, though. And again, Auditor General Report, page 22, 1.86. In the 2012-13 fiscal year, the Secretariat was developing another guide on the management and reporting of horizontal initiatives, which it published in 2014. In our opinion, this is the Auditor General, this guide did not provide enough clarity to the lead reporting department to ensure that reporting was complete and accurate, nor did it provide enough information to help departments and agencies report on progress and develop a costing framework for horizontal initiatives. What I'd like to know is, that's not that long ago, how did you get something so important so wrong?
Well, thank you, Mr. Christopherson. 3 points, I suppose. The first is it's an honor to be here, and we take our responsibilities with respect to parliamentary committees very seriously. As I mentioned earlier, the Auditor General has done a number of audits in this area, and those have been very constructive, very helpful to us in surfacing and addressing some of the very real challenges that we face with inherently complex initiatives when we're working across government to achieve outcomes. And this most recent report is simply a continuation of that good working relationship with the Auditor General. That's point number one. Your reference to a 2013 report, sir, anything with respect to the actual implementation of the initiative is best directed to the department. I can't speak to pilot projects, et cetera. What I do own and what I will be glad to speak to is the guide that we promulgated in 2014.
Correct.
That sets out the responsibilities as we saw it with respect to the lead department and partner departments. And that guide identified principles around reporting. So just as an example.
Before you break, remember it got a failing remark in the Auditor General's report.
I believe, sir, that what the Auditor General said is that the guidance could be clarified. I don't know that that's a failing grade. I don't think that they grade us. They simply identify
Nor
things
did it provide enough information to help departments. I mean, we have different degrees of passing, but go ahead, sir.
Right. Well, so the guide as it exists now is essentially two parts. There are some, it's a principle-based approach with respect to reporting to Parliament. So we're talking about transparent reporting, clear accountabilities, identifying horizontal initiatives separate from existing initiatives in departments. So we believe that we have made some good progress in that respect through initiatives, through tools such as our horizontal initiatives database. This is available on the TBS website. It's accessible to parliamentarians and the public. It identifies the 29 initiatives currently identified as horizontal in the Government of Canada. It's $3 billion. And then from that initiative, you can either go by department or you can go by fiscal year, and you can find out how these entities are involved in horizontal management.
Thank you. Well, why won't you take ownership?
I'm sorry, Mr. Christopherson, you're at 5 minutes. You can come back. There's time. We have some 20 minutes left. Yes.
Very good. Good to hear. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Mr. Pagan, just a question of clarification for the purpose of our analysts being able to do their work. Could I ask you to provide us with that statement I asked for in 2 weeks' time, if at all possible, on the complexity of managing the Westminster system accountability issues? Would it be possible?
I believe that we can respond to that, Madam Chair. Just to be clear, I mean, I'm far from an expert on the Westminster system of government. What I can speak to is the way in which we allocate resources in our system. I'm responsible for expenditure management and the estimates process. So I can speak to Treasury Board approval of money, Parliament's appropriations to departments, and the way in which we report back. And then I will add some detail about the 29 initiatives that work across those
different departments. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Second thing, just to go back to Mr. McGovern's issue about Nexus, and we've been doing a little bit of quick research. So it started in 2002 as a frequent traveler program. When the Beyond the Border program started, it became a trusted traveler program. I think that's the nuanced difference that was brought to the program, and that answers Mr. McColman's question too. So now we have a more open round of questions, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my questions are going to be short. I'm going to give the balance of my time to my colleague, Mr. Aria. And they're going to be more reflective of comments than questions. But first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Pagan, for providing us with that written response. And I think it'll serve a good purpose. It'll allow us to use that in a constructive manner. I mean, it's important for us to understand where you're coming from too, and I think that will help us allow us to do that. I just wanted to touch a little bit on this idea of fiscal responsibility, and the idea that I recognize that this is $1.1 billion over a 5-year life of the program, and I recognize that in some contexts within government, it's not a significant amount of money. But to the taxpayers in my riding, it's a significant amount of money. And although government departments and a lot of times politicians are less concerned with the total amount, but how that money is best allocated within to ensure we get the best bang for our buck. I know that the taxpayers in my riding are quite conscious of getting the best value for their dollar, but also in ensuring that we spend just enough money to deliver the program and not a cent more. and I'm not concerned with whether or not we have extra money to do something else with that falls underneath this envelope, an add-on. I want to make sure that we get what we're paid for and nothing more. And so, to you, Ms. Chang, because my comments kind of originate from a response that you were giving earlier, and I recognize the context of what you were giving it under, but I just wanted to highlight that because I know that to the everyday taxpayer, it's a significant amount of money. And while the everyday taxpayer, as well as myself, recognizes the value that we get from these, and I understand the tremendous difficulty that there is in measuring performance, I think that we collectively need to do a much better job of ensuring that we do a better job of not only being accountable, but figuring out this measurability. And I know that I'm measured, and I have to be accountable for my actions. And, you know, increasingly over time, government departments are going to come under the same scrutiny. And it's important that we drill down to the bottom of these. And, you know, I know oftentimes Mr. Christopherson seems very harsh and hard to deal with. I find him very difficult to deal with too, but he's got the right idea. You know, we need to all do a better job of being much more accountable than we have been in the past. And I commend you all for being here today. And I wouldn't want to trade spots with you, but if I did, I would recognize that I'm going to have to be accountable for my actions and the actions of the people that work underneath me. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Arya.
Thank you, TJ. Mr. Pagan, you mentioned that recently you have issued a guide on the management and reporting of horizontal initiatives. How are you going to ensure that this guide is interpreted and applied correctly by all departments?
Well, thank you for the question. And if I may also respond to the proceeding about the importance of value for money. As I mentioned just a little bit earlier, we do have a new Treasury Board policy. It's called the Policy on Results. It came into effect in the summer of 2014. And this is going to be a very important building block for us in terms of continuing the journey of ensuring that resources are allocated with a specific result or outcome in mind, with better reporting to parliamentarians and to Canadians about how those resources are being utilized and results being achieved. In terms of the go forward on taking our existing guidance and our existing tools, as I said, we don't do this in a box. And this process here today is in fact part of the process where we engage.
No, I'm sorry, but I thought this guide is specifically for this horizontal initiative.
It is, but the guidance at the end of the day, the guidance is intended for departments so that they can report back to Parliament. And what I'm suggesting, sir, is that the Auditor General's report and this hearing is part of the process of better understanding what the needs are. And we heard both.
My question was that how are you going to ensure that all departments, were they consulted in developing this guide? Were they involved in developing this guide?
Yes, in the version that we have now, that is based from April 2014, there had been a process of engagement and consultation to identify needs, and there's always a balance. We want to provide that guidance. We don't want to foist upon departments something that they were not expecting and that they simply can't do because we're asking for the moon.
Mr. Pagan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know Madam Chang would like to complete the answer too, and I have to cut you off, Mr. Arya. We're over time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to perhaps explain a little bit. My answer was a little bit long. I think what I was trying to get to was the importance of needing to get to the performance and outcome. At no point was I indicating or suggesting that $1 billion is not important, and therefore we should not be as diligent in terms of looking for the value for money. So I, want to just clarify that that's not where I was going.
Thank you very much.
And I recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Generou, for 5 minutes.
I'll cede my time.
Thank you very much. So we now go to Mr. Christopherson. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And TJ, I just want to tell you, I think you're a great guy. So I'll leave that with you. I just want to come back. I have to say I'm still not real happy yet, Mr. Pagan. I would urge you to take a look at Mr. Brown's testimony yesterday if you didn't see it. He got it in one and reflected that and sort of took his hits. I guess what's troubling me is Treasury Board doesn't seem to be willing to stand up and take the hit and then talk about how they're going to fix things. We're still stuck on a lot of defensive things, and I'm going to spend just a minute. You responded to me when I read this quote by saying, well, there wasn't enough clarity. Well, let's be clear on exactly what clarity we're talking about. This is the AG. In our opinion, this guide, meaning the one published in 2014, this guide did not provide enough clarity to lead the reporting, to the lead reporting department to ensure that reporting was complete and accurate. Well, I'm going to tell you, complete and accurate data is kind of important to us, and even more so in this term. Nor did it provide enough information to help departments and agencies report on progress and develop a costing framework for horizontal initiatives. And I remind you, sir, that the Auditor General's opening remarks in this regard were, finally, the Treasury Board of Canada's Secretariat did not give departments and agencies specific guidance on costing and measuring program results, which led to different interpretations and inconsistent financial information. We concluded that although departments and agencies met many of their commitments under the action plan, they achieved limited results toward the intended benefits. They also had few performance indicators to use in assessing results, end quote. And it's Treasury Board that provides them with those performance indicators. So if Treasury Board gets it wrong, everybody's going to get it wrong. And that's why I've been focusing on Treasury Board, because when you get it right, it works. When you get it wrong, it doesn't. You got it wrong, and I'm just looking for some kind of assurance that how you got it so wrong in 2014, just a couple of years ago, I would like some assurance as to how we can be comfortable that you got it right this time, because I'm not hearing that, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Christopherson. I think now it's crystal clear what our misunderstanding may be, because in your comments, sir, you just said that it's the Treasury Board Secretariat that provides to departments the performance indicators. And, sir, that is not...
Department, though?
No. That's... And
okay.
I'm sorry if I was not clear.
Well, if I've got it wrong, please educate me.
And that's why we genuinely welcome the opportunity to engage with the committee and with our partner departments to make sure that we get it right. And this goes to Madam Chair's request for some information about our vertical accountabilities and horizontal reporting. Mr. Christopherson, the guidance as it exists now, I talked about an end-to-end, and I don't want to bore you, but one of the key parts of the existing guidance is a Treasury Board approval. So departments will come together, they'll identify a need, there will be funding, in a budget or otherwise provided from the government to do something. The Treasury Board Secretariat will work with departments to develop that Treasury Board submission, which sets out the terms and conditions of what departments will do. It's quite granular. Once that approval is in place, Parliament will vote the funds and departments will implement the initiatives. The responsibility for identifying your progress, the ongoing measurement and reporting is with the department. What we do at the Treasury Board Secretariat is we do provide the guidance. We specify you must report, and here's where and here's when. We've developed templates that lay out how to present costing information, how to identify
template. You give the template.
One of our challenges is to move from an input or output indicator to something that gets to the outcome that we desire. I cited Nexus as an example of where we want to go, because it makes clear that if you use Nexus, you get through twice as quick as if you stand in line. To me, that's an outcome that supports the goal of expediting travel. Our guidance is based on making clear to departments that they need to develop indicators for their initiatives and then provide that data to public safety so that public safety can report. It's not, sir, the Treasury Board Secretariat that develops the indicators for the department.
Okay, well, help me understand. Fair enough, sir. But help me understand, and Nancy, Madam Chiang, I turn to you too. I mean, I didn't write this. The Auditor General did. And the Auditor General wrote in his opening remarks The Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat did not give departments and agencies specific guidance on costing and measuring, which you just acknowledged you do, and yet you're also telling me at the same time that it's like, I'm very confused. The Auditor General has said that guidance that you're talking about matters, and yet you didn't do it right. Ms. Cheng, can you help?
Okay, very quickly because we're running out of time.
So first off, I'd like to confirm and support what Mr. Pagan said. It's not the Treasury Board's responsibility to actually come up with the performance indicators. It is up to the lead department and the partner departments and agencies to do that. However, they have a role to provide guidance. So very quickly, just as an example, if they get together and sort of say, this is the state of play, and the partner departments provide some information, like who's there to sort of say, is it enough? Does it provide a real good picture? Does the lead department actually say, takes the charge and say, well, it's not meaningful enough, go back? Or do they just take that and then just collate that and publish that? So there's some, clarity in the margin in terms of saying how we can move forward. And who's really responsible to have that consolidated view? Well, arguably the lead department and the partner departments have that responsibility jointly, but who does what? And perhaps some additional clarification from the center might help. So it is not Treasury Board Secretariat that needs to come back with all these performance measures, and they're not responsible for the horizontal reporting. Thank you.
But they do have a role in making things better.
Yes.
In the guidance, okay. So maybe that should be one of our recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Pagan.
Well, thank you very much to all for your participation in this 42nd meeting of our committee. We are going to break for 2 minutes, just suspend for 2 minutes rather, so that we can go into camera and committee business. Merci encore et probablement qu'on va vous revoir très bientôt.
Thank you again, and we'll probably see you soon.